Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's AACG member meetup program. We're really excited to have artist Jeremy Sinkus with us today. He's a former mineral collector and digger and began his glass journey in 2015 by studying with Daniel Clayman. So you'll hear a lot more about that from him, and we're really excited to have someone that has had a real transformation in sort of the perspective and way that they're working. I think you'll find this to be a very unique program. And Jeremy, if you can go ahead and share your screen, I'd love to also thank our sponsor of this program. We don't see it yet. Please go ahead and screen share when you're able.
Here it comes.
Alrighty. Okay. So Habitat would like to thank the AACG for today's presentation and is proud to sponsor this AACG Fire Meetup Zoom event featuring artist Jeremy Sinkus. We have had the pleasure of presenting Jeremy's incredible and innovative glasswork for over a year, and we continue to be impressed by his inventive techniques, bold ideas, and growing collector interest. Most recently, Jeremy's work was featured during the Sarasota Glass Coast Weekend this past February, and he is also now featured at the Glass 54 Art Experience at the Habitat Gallery Complex in Royal Oak, Michigan. Habitat invites AACG members and guests to visit Habitat and experience Glass 54 in person, where more than 400 works by leading international artists offer a powerful look at the cutting edge of glasswork today. Habitat encourages you to make the annual glass art presentation part of your calendar every year and to continue supporting the artists who are shaping the future of contemporary glass. Thank you so much, Habitat Gallery, for sponsoring this Fired Up event, and please visit habitat.com for more information on the gallery. All right, thank you so much, and Jeremy, please go ahead and take it away.
Hi, thank you, Demetra. AACG and Habitat. I appreciate the time and opportunity to be able to talk about my work and my experience in glass. I think I'm going to start with I've been working in glass for about 25 years. I started really in about 2003. I was living in Worcester, Massachusetts. I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, and my first experience with glass was in Sterling, Mass, when I met a group of friends in my early 20s who were gaffers and glass workers for a local glass blower, an artist, and they took me over to the mill one night, and I got to see glass for the first time. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about a little bit my home and inspiration, how I got started. I'll go over some early work. That's a little different than what I'm doing now. My studio, which is really unique. I love where I'm working. Some current work that I've been doing. And when I say current, I mean probably within the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years will be more of what my current work, I consider current work, which will be all covered geological, nodule, dichroic, and the vesicular glass foam that I've been working with. I've kind of narrowed down what I do to 4 series because I can't really just keep on concentrating on one thing. I'm always really exploring and trying new things in glass. It's really kind of a way for me to travel in my own studio through a material. So you may see changes and things happen with my work coming and over the years. So there's that, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. And if there's something really important during the middle of the presentation, feel free to let me know. Okay, Worcester, Massachusetts, right in the middle of the state. There's a really horrible photo of the old mill that I could find. I can't remember who the artist's name was that they worked for. It was over 20 something years ago. And when I got into the glass blowing studio, there was this like roar of furnaces, and it was dark down there, but the glory holes are bright orange, and the furnace was bright orange, and it was very volcanic and exciting and industrial, and uh, but it was an art studio. It was a creative space, and it was really, really, really interesting to me, and I loved it, and I wanted to know more. So I started pulling cane on the weekends with these guys and making things out of it in my studio. And I wanted to do more with glass than that. So I decided to start flame working because I heard that flame working was a way to work in glass, and I didn't have to rely on help or a big glass furnace studio or to work with somebody. I could be kind of on my own and work in a small space in my basement at the time. So somebody let me borrow a torch and a small kiln. And at the local Worcester Center for Crafts, I heard that there was a class in flame working. And that's when I met Sally Prash. And she taught a 2-week course on scientific flame working borosilicate glass. And it blew my mind. I had a blast with it because I could work on a small scale at home, or where I set up a small studio and got to experience glass now whenever I wanted. And that got me to understand the material. It got to understand some methods, how just kind of what it felt like to work with it, and what I could do with these smaller tools in a big glass blowing studio. After exploring that for a couple of years, I got interest in the glass art world and started following the different flame workers online that were doing things at the time. And one of them was Mylan Townsend, and he had a class fairly close to me that I could go out to his studio and learn a little bit more about how to sculpt, and from human form, some color applications, different ways of making cane in flame worked borosilicate glass. And while I was there, he was also getting into casting at the time, and lucky for me, he decided he would include a little bit of casting notes and how to do lost wax casting. So that was my first experience with any sort of understanding of casting. And did a lot of sea life at the time. I was inspired by the glass artists that were kind of available for me to see online and then in the local galleries. So I could kind of understand what it meant to be a glass artist and what people made. And there was a lot of sea life, and I grew up going to the ocean, and my dad was a scuba diver, fisherman, and we did a lot by the ocean and the sea. So naturally, I made a lot of sea life. And for years, me exhibiting the sea life at local craft shows and outdoor festivals and things got me to meet people that were also interested in sea life. It was like a bridge or a conversation starter to kind of show, hey, well, this is what I'm making, what I'm into, and people can identify with that. And I got to meet people that were also interested in sea life, and their lives were in the ocean world somehow, whether they were underwater photographers or into conservation or scuba divers and travelers. So I got to meet a lot of people, and they introduced me into different worlds where I could exhibit in the underwater, in the ocean world at different events, where I got to meet lots of heroes I didn't know existed, and got to be immersed in the underwater, in the sea life world, whether it was tourism or conservation, or I was surrounded by these people for a while, which was really great. So, like I said, the art and glass was kind of a bridge for me to connect with people and in the worlds in which I enjoyed, but on like another way to what was a conversation starter, and that I could participate in that world. And here's some more of the flame work. This is kind of a combination of some scientific techniques of blown borosilicate and flame worked sculptural borosilicate on the inside, like a ship in a bottle sort of phenomenon. This piece was about 18 inches long, and it was, I think this one was in one of the Life Forms exhibitions. Here's the first one that I made for the first Glass Life Form exhibition. This was a flame worked. I wanted to have kind of life and death in the same piece. Since it's life forms, I wanted something scientific. I wanted to show bones. I wanted to show, full like some anatomy. And so I did a fish carcass. It was a blue fish carcass with some guts. And this was probably I think this was about 14 inches long or something, all hot worked. And my connections in the underwater world with my art got me to meet people in Hawaii and the Caribbean and the islands. And it got me into scuba diving and visiting tropical places. So I would go and be inspired by actually scuba diving underwater and getting to know the corals and the fish and the environments up close and personal and know what it's like to be there. And so that really inspired me for a while. Here's another sort of a ship in a bottle piece. This was probably about 16, 18 inches long. I think you can kind of see now a lot of what I like about glass is that it's transparent or can be transparent or is mostly associated as being transparent. So I like that quality of glass. So I like to find things inside. I always like to be able to see something on the inside of glass. This is Inclusions, about 2018. This is when I started to connect minerals and sea life together. My current studio is now in about 200-year-old mill building in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. It's on the Deerfield River. This was the first cutlery knife making factory, first or second in the country that predates the Civil War. This is an old place, and all the old beams and a lot of history is still here. And around the whole property, you can still find pieces of pottery and knives and metal and all sorts of things that they used. And it's got some charm to it. And one of the great things about it too is that it is hydroelectric. So 100-something years ago, there was some deed with the property that said that they will always be able to use the power from the waterfall in order to generate the electricity for the building. So we have a waterfall right outside the window over here, and that powers the whole building. So all my casting kilns, my cold working equipment, everything that I do here, including oxygen generation, is powered by the river. So that's really nice to know that the source is right there, and it's very eco-friendly. Here's the inside of the studio before I messed it up with all my stuff. It's about 2,400 square feet. And I used to drive by this place every day from my other studio in town. And it was kind of left after the knife factory went out of business, and the roofs were falling in, the windows were falling out. It was in disrepair. And somebody fell in love with this place from California, and he wanted to turn it back into a functioning mill again, with makers and artists. Well, I don't think artists are in his mind, but more like small business and manufacturing. And I used to drive by this place every day thinking, wouldn't it be great in a perfect world if this old mill building, well, it's a series of them, there's 6 here, would be turned into such a thing. So I ran down there one day in the middle of a town meeting because I saw some cars out front and demanded to talk to somebody that could tell me what was going on here, so that I could uh, maybe get my dream studio and be able to make that happen. So luckily, I did. We talked some business, and I got this section now, which I'm working in. This is just upstream from the dam in Shelburne Falls. We're known for the Bridge of Flowers. It's been there for a long time, back when the trolleys used to go across the river to the different mills. It's no longer used for trolleys. The association turned it into a garden over the river, and people travel from all over. You know, we got people from all over the world that signed the book that travel over the Bridge of Flowers. And here's another shot from my side of the river at the waterfall and the Iron Bridge. And actually, I had a studio in that red building that's up there with the black windows for a little while. That was North River Glass Works. They were glass blowers back in the 90s and early 2000s, and unfortunately, he passed away. And over the years, it's now a bakery, but I got to be in that studio for a little while. Here's a look on the inside of my studio. Now I've got a bunch of vent hoods for different things. So what I do, I still do flame working. I probably do flame working and casting 50-50, maybe a little bit more casting these days. A lot of cold working with my gem cutting and stone work back in my rock days. I brought that into my glass a long time ago, and it stuck. And I always spend time cold working and using sort of a negative sculpting method with my work a lot. And you'll see I do a lot of the welding in shop here for the stands and lamination. I do my photography here. Family, we live right up the road. We like to pretend we're gardeners. My kid loves to dig, which is great. And he wants his own studio someday. Yay, very happy. And also part of the studio here is I opened up a small section as a display area and a studio gallery for works before I send them out to find homes for other galleries and shops and representation. I have some here for people to visit with if they want make an appointment or for different events that we have here at the mill. And I was a rock hound and into minerals since I was around 15 years old. I went to my first rock and mineral collecting show, and it stuck forever. And I really got into it. I used to travel around the country once I got my license, and find maps and mine and dig and collect in different places all around the country, and would sell at mineral shows, local mineral shows. I ended up going to Tucson. I helped another fellow miner with her shows. She was really established, so I got to learn how to kind of be a peddler and sell things as a young person in sort of international, very international, multicultural events. People come from all over the world in the geological world to trade minerals and fossils and gems, and it was a very exploratory and wonderful time for me, and I learned a lot. And when I got into glass, the glass was as much fluid and ocean-like to me, but it was also geological. I mean, we always say that, gems are glassy, and sometimes we say glass is gemmy or jewel tones. They associate with each other, and it really made a lot of sense to me to revisit my passions in my rock hounding mineral world in glass. Maybe I shouldn't have shown this a picture of me when I was in my teens collecting some quartz down in Connecticut in this big pocket. And then on the right, There's Herkimer Diamonds up in Herkimer, New York. I used to frequent there all the time, and uh, that was an inspiring part of my life. And here's a Herkimer Diamond cluster of borosilicate glass that I made. This was all first. I think I flame worked it to size, and then I hand faceted and polished these and assembled them to look like a Herkimer diamond cluster on a concrete base, which also had glass Herkimer diamonds in it, as if they were still in the rough. Tourmaline, can't say enough about it. It was my favorite, is my favorite mineral. I've chased this stuff throughout my whole time in the mineral world. I loved the texture. There's something about those striations and the color and the formations of tourmaline. I don't know if it was because it was a multicolored mineral. There's so many things about it that I absolutely loved. One of the things it reminded me of were these sort of evaporated ice crystals and frost crystals you'd find in the spring, because of the striations. And I wanted to, when I was working first trying to make mineral related work, this was where I started. I said, well, I'm going to see if I can mimic a tourmaline crystal. And I tried for years. I tried buying different plasters online to try to, take an impression of my crystal in there and push the hot glass in, and it never worked. There were all these problems. So it took years, and finally I kept crossing all these problems off my list and learning what didn't work and what did work until I finally figured it out. And the one on the left is a tourmaline crystal that I had in my collection that I had made a mold from. And then that was actually flame work. That's flame worked borosilicate glass. And I had made a mold and created a realistic surfacing to my tourmaline crystal in the colors. And it was an aha moment that just blew my mind. I said, yes, this is it for me. So I remembered that I was a glass worker, flame worker, glass blower of sorts. So that must mean I can blow bubbles, which made it functional. And then I made them hollow and increased the size. And I started making these tourmaline glasses. And these tourmaline glasses were another bridge to connect in the mineral world on another level besides minerals. So now I had something to offer that was mineral related and could be appreciated by people that were also into minerals and fossils, but it was functional. And it was something that was unique to me that I could make and be able to bring to the mineral world. So it was another bridge to meeting a lot of people and a lot of heroes I didn't know existed until I brought that to the mineral world. And with that new inspiration of working with plasters, I said, well, this is casting when it comes down to it. And I've always followed Daniel Clayman's work, and he was just absolutely amazed by his methods and what he's done over the years. And I saw he was doing a master class at Urban Glass in Brooklyn, and I said, well, I got to do that. I got to make time. I hope there's still a spot. And there was a spot, and I took this class with him, and it was so invigorating. I got so much enthusiasm from it and learned so much. And he was so enthusiastic about it. I think up until that moment, I've never met anybody that was so enthusiastic about glass. I thought that I was like kind of a little too into it for some reason. Like I was always really into what I was doing and wanted to talk about it and express it. And the people around me are like, oh, that's great, Jeremy. That's great. But Daniel Clayman, he had that same spark, and it was really, really awesome to be in the room with him and hear about all his experiences. And he was a great teacher. So he set me off into more casting, and casting was, well, now I didn't rely on the limitations of flame working. I could do more. I could scale up my work. I could make things bigger. I could spend more time on them. I could actually sculpt. I could work in other materials like clay and wax. and sculpt what I wanted, and then through methods turn that into eventually glass. And it brought out a lot of those geological themes and geological phenomenon, because now I'm working with, plastic. Not only is glass geological because of the material itself, but also the plasters and the heat and the time. And it's like all the methods that went into casting glass to me was sort of geological. And the middle piece here is a tourmaline wall sculpture that I wanted to express how I saw tourmaline as art. Tourmaline with its shape and its color, and there was so much about it that was very attractive to me as art. How can I express that without just making a piece and saying this is art? So instead, I put this gold frame that you'd see in an art museum around the piece to say this is art to me. And here's somebody. So this is Brian, and this is the candelabra piece. People in the mineral world, maybe you've heard of it, but there's a mineral specimen, a tourmaline specimen called the candelabra that was mined in California a long time ago by his dad and another fellow. And it was one of the most spectacular minerals, tourmaline specimens ever found. And it was put into the Smithsonian Museum for a while. And it was called the candelabra. So I thought, well, I'm a glass artist. I can kind of work on that theme. And candelabras have been made out of glass. Let's see. So I made this candelabra piece in theme with the blue cap tourmaline for Brian. And here's a couple pieces here. The piece on the left is a commission for the first Van Pelt Mineral Photography Award that actually was given this year. And again, this is the blue cap tourmaline theme with sort of a quartz crystal matrix on the bottom to look a little natural with a little crystal theme. And on the right is sort of a fantasy specimen if you were to find an amazing rhodochrosite with fluorites and quartz. So blowing bubbles and molds, I got excited and I kind of made a lot of them and started tying them together and made these crystal chandeliers and used different meshes to tie all the crystals to and illuminated them from behind. And I got into this for a few years. I was really, really into making big pieces because as a flame worker starting, I was making little pendants and beads and marbles and tiny things. And I slowly got to build up my scale as a glass artist from flame working to casting and then blowing in flame working at the same time. And actually all these crystals are flame worked and blown into steel molds. Minerals and fossils. Here's a cast piece on the left of a T-Rex. That's about 16 inches tall in the stand. By exhibiting at the mineral shows and in Tucson, meeting a lot of great people, met a fellow who had a fossil quarry in Wyoming, and we decided to collaborate together. And I got to make an amazing gar fossil turned into glass. This is one of the best preserved and largest gar fossils found in that region that I get to preserve in glass. And ammonites, of course, kind of combines the earth and the sea. They're a geological event as far as digging them up now, but they were sea creatures 500, 250 million years ago. And they work great in glass. I love making ammonites out of glass to bring that transparency, some earthiness to it. And they're naturally opalescent. So when they fossilize, they also opalize. And to be able to kind of take that into the glass world just fit really, really well. One of the other series I work in is called Nodule. So a lot of the work, as you see over the years, I've kind of mimicked things that I found in the natural world, whether it was a fish or a crystal or a flower. I wanted to know what it was like to be a designer. What if I did go to art school? Because I didn't go to art school, but what would I think like, or what would people think like working in glass in that sort of environment? So I said, well, I'm going to do something simple. I'm going to write down the top 10 attributes that I found people were most interested in glass objects that I've noticed over the years working in glass, and kind of take this sort of scientific approach. Well, let's put this down, and then I'll take those top 10 attributes and make one sculpture out of them. See if I can fit them all into one sculpture. And it looked sort of like this. And it had these protruding windows. There was something interesting inside. It had a surface texture. There were contrasts to it. It wasn't all the same. It was holdable and touchable. Everybody wanted to touch the glass, hold it. You want to reach out. When something became, untouchable, it was, you kind of feared it a little more. You didn't want to break it, but once it became touchable, it was another sense you could experience with the piece. It was the another number 6 was that it had to be familiar, but not exactly something. I wanted it to look maybe it was like something like this. Looks like a meteor, or it looks like a virus, or it looks like something, but it's not mimicry, or doesn't look exactly like another object. And I've noticed that people and myself like objects are attracted to them that are not from our atmosphere, that are not from, like, say, by that I mean either underground, underwater, or outer space are very intriguing locations to have materials come from. So I liked having that sort of association in the piece. Each piece sort of has a story. They're all one of a kind. And, number 10, don't share all your secrets. But there are over 320 different designs in nodules so far that I've done over the years. And you can see them on my web shop that I've used this theory in working. Here's a couple here. The one on the right is mostly like the first one that I made. It had something interesting inside and windows. But I like having the windows. One of the biggest parts of this is the windows they're protruding outward. So it's like they're inviting you in. They're protruding outward. They're sort of calling you. They're reaching. So the view is reaching to you. And also the windows are small. If you notice, none of them are large. They're all small because I don't want to make what's inside obvious. Because if it's obvious, you're not going to look very hard. But if it's a small window, it's going to make you get a little closer. It's going to make you pull it up to your eyes. It's going to make you kind of look in a little harder to see the full picture. Here's a couple other ones here. The Witness series. There are so many windows in here. There's hundreds of them in some of these pieces because I wanted to feel like it was also witnessing you as you were witnessing it. Are we looking in, or is it looking out? And I started going down a rabbit hole of how we see the world through glass. We see through the world through windows. We see the world through camera lenses, through our glasses, through screens. It's like we're witnessing the world through glass most of the time, which is a very weird thing to think about. Here's another one, ocean view. Dichroic glass is a blast. It has given me so much joy in a way to play with light and color. I wouldn't have probably gone into dichroic glass unless somebody generously offered me some years ago. And I accepted these sheets of dichroic glass, and I said, well, I'll have them in my studio and maybe I'll think of something to do with them. And I started experimenting, or I'd start, maybe taking a piece and putting it up against the dichroic glass, and I get to understand what it was and what it did a little bit more. So I started experimenting with it and fell in love with it and how it brought light and color and movement to clear glass. like nothing I've ever seen. Uh, it could look natural if there were already like if you were sort of mimicking something that was opalescent or had iridescence to it. It was a great way to express that. But also, it illuminated these sculptures from within, from inside. And there was no light source. There was no light or batteries or anything. It was just from the light that was around you coming into the piece and then reflecting off the dichroic glass and then bringing the colors of the dichroic glass light with it, catching on all the little surface textures of the sculpture and coloring it with light. And it's a very different way to color a piece of glass than with like a blue, like if the glass is colored with cobalt or iron or copper. It is a very different look to it, and the light and the movement, I think, just brings some joy and life to it. And it's been really, really fun to work with. And I find as many ways to include it in my work as possible now. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to, that somebody gave me years ago, because now I'm having so much fun with it. And it adds a very contemporary look too, because it's these thin layers of metal, like microscopic, molecularly thin layers of metal that's in the glass. So now there's this metal in there, and it adds this sort of futuristic, very contemporary look to the glass as well. It illuminates wall art. I put it behind wall pieces, and as you walk by, the light, depending on the angle, reflects out and illuminates each piece. It has a very ethereal feel to it. You can't get a better gradation besides just the light itself. Just the angle in which the light is entering the piece will turn the color from amber to blue, with every color in between. It sort of gently gradiates within each other. And this was a cast sort of dinghy, like if you were on the coast, and it captured the colors of the sunset and the sea all at the same time in this piece. I really found that fun. And then adding the dichroic to my mineral and tourmaline inspired work is like best of both worlds now. I have this sort of hyper opalescence that I can work with and color these tourmaline inspired sculptures, and the colors just illuminate each striation right on the surfaces, and that each striation can change from pink to blue depending on where on the striation it is, and your angle to the light reflecting off the piece. And yeah, so back up here, that piece on the left, that tall piece, was about 2 feet tall, and that was the largest piece I've ever cast in glass. It was super heavy, so I designed this track and rail structure to hold the piece for me while I carved all the striations under the lathe, because it was killing my back. I couldn't hold it and be able to control those straight lines very well. So I still had my hand on the piece, and I could kind of make it move so that it wasn't like mechanically straight. It still had that, a little bit of an organic straightness to it. It wasn't perfect, but this held the base of the weight for it. So I kept pushing this underneath the lathe over and over and over to get all those striations on there. Which leads me to vesicular glass that I've been working with in the past year and a half. I found vesicular glass, I wanted this to exist. First off, I was in my mineral work and geological work, there was a missing form of glass for me, and I wanted this sort of bubbly volcanic glass to replicate volcanic stone and basalt. And there actually is a kind of stone called vesicular stone, like pumice or volcanic stones. Anything with tiny little gas bubbles in it that aerate it and give all these little voids is called vesicular stone or rock. And I wish there was a way to find this to happen. So I was experimenting and was failing. I couldn't figure it out. I'm trying to make this happen. And then I saw that at the UK Glass School, Josh Curley was giving a class on how to make glass foam. Poof, wow. You kidding me? This is awesome. So I took a Zoom class, figured out, learned how to, the basic recipe on how to do this, and just started experimenting in the studio, making all sorts of work. That's all I wanted to do. It was something very new to me. It was like something I could introduce to my work that really made it unique and added that contrast to it. It was, subterranean. It's meteor-like and geological. Adds contrast like no other. It's glass. It's the same exact glass that I'm casting with. It's just how do you want to say, like foamed, I guess, or vesiculated. Would you say that? And so they're compatible with each other. A lot of the work that I do, I get to melt clear solid glass with the foam glass, vesicular glass together, all in one casting, and the bubbles from the vesicular glass will travel into the solid glass, but the solid glass stays solid. And now you have these layers and these contrasts, which really, really work well together. It's a really unique material. It's hard to believe it's glass sometimes. It's super light. It's great to carve as a stone carver or glass carver. It has a skin to it that you can kind of penetrate through or leave this sort of organic, like it kind of shows its history on how it was made in the surface skin. And it allows me to increase my scale in casting because it's so light. So now I can make these large pieces, and they're great for the wall. Just really big pieces, and carve them, and I get to sculpt now in very different ways than I used to. Here's a piece on the right while it's fresh out of the mold, still in the mold in the kiln. And I experimented with a few different colors. Not all colors work the same. It's a lot of getting to understand how the glass moves and how it melts and does its thing. And the piece on the left is the piece on the right after I carved it, and it's in a large quartz bell jar on display as if it was a specimen of some sort. Here's one called Evaporate. This piece is at Habitat in Michigan. This is a combination between flame worked. The drips are flame worked, but the rest is cast. The clear and the pink is all cast together, and these big drips that I had flame worked are then assembled on and attached later. And the pastel colors that come out of vesicular glass is different for me to work with, and I am appreciating color more and more, and how it can also be geological or part of the play. Here's some of my lava pools that are another way to show this contrast. I mean, like if you were to make what makes blue bluer, but putting it next to something red. This is a way for the clear glass to be even more clear and gem-like next to such a coarse, volcanic-looking other material. And this is all the same glass, just a different color. And it's all cast at the same time and then cold worked and polished. When it's molten, it is really neat to see. It rises like bread and looks like lava. and boils up. And here's a wall piece about 3 feet tall, several different colors next to a bowl that I had carved out. Probably can't hold liquid, but it's great for displaying other things in. A couple other pieces to show some contrast with some flame worked. Like I call that a sprite on the right with dichroic and clear little flame worked drips inside the volcanic vesicular glass. And that piece on the left is also at Habitat. I love that piece. The way the bubbles grew up into the purple. You can never duplicate that again. It's just so fun. Here's those ammonites, vesicular glass. And thank you, Habitat, for selling one of my favorite pieces, Glass 54, last week at the opening, and showing some of my favorite pieces in that series. They have a bunch of great ones that I had given them to be able to show in the right spot. And so I'm going to end my presentation here. So my current stuff was just recently featured on the cover as CGS, Contemporary Glass, at the Glass Network publication. I'll be teaching vesicular glass this fall. Showed you the new studio showroom here at my studio. I'll be co-teaching with Robert DeGrenier at the Shoals Marine Lab this summer, and trying to put together a large-scale installation with dichroic. And I mean, like a large environmental architectural piece. I'm going to clean my studio eventually and organize a multi-series show, I hope, with all 4 of the series I work with in one show. But thanks to everybody who took the time to listen to my presentation, and AACG and Habitat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you again to Habitat Gallery in Royal Oak, Michigan for sponsoring this featured Fired Up presentation. Just a reminder that Glass 54 is going to be up at Habitat Gallery at least through the end of the summer. It's called Glass 54 because it is an incredible exhibition that they have every year, featuring international leading glass artists from around the world, and it is now in its 54th year. So over 400 works of art. Whether you collect or not, it's really a sight to see, and it's worth a special trip out to Royal Oak, Michigan to see that. We do have a number of questions from the audience that I'd like to talk to you about, Jeremy. The first is, great. What is the size of your nodules?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so they range from jewelry size. Typically, they're a paperweight series, so they're about paperweight size. But I cast them up to, about 2 feet tall with the architectural forms, and some are about the size of a basketball.
Okay, wow. We also have a question from Judith Cushman. It seems to me that as an artist, you're continuously looking for new ways to create gee whiz experiences. Are there new directions you are looking to bring into your work? And does space exploration and the visual experiences of space send you in new ways to use your techniques?
Yes, I'm always open. I'm always searching for something new to do. I like to explore. This is like a journey, like I said earlier, through glass. I'm using the material as a way to kind of explore and go on a journey. So if I'm trying to find other ways that glass can be beautiful and used in art all the time, and collaborating with other people to do that, as well as experimenting in my own studio in space, and has definitely been an influence. I mean, dichroic glass was actually invented for space originally, and to help deflect heat on reentry for for different vessels. And but apparently it didn't work as good as they thought it was. So it ended up being beautiful and used in art. And then the glass world kind of took that in. But yes, definitely.
Then we have a question about your vesicular pieces. Is the skin of the foam much heavier and harder?
Hmm. Actually, it is. The skin on the foam is exposed directly to the heat, where the inside is not. It's insulated from the heat. So the glass sort of shines, not shines, but melts to where it's a little bit more shiny and solid on the surface. So that skin can be, a couple of millimeter to a couple millimeters thick of a more rigid glass. Yeah, it has a membrane to it.
All right. And what adhesive do you prefer to connect flame-worked elements to your cast works?
Hextall,
Yeah.
uh, primarily. It has shown to be the most optical,
Hmm.
have the most strength and versatility. It's been great. It's I think people have done tests where it's actually harder than the glass or stronger than the glass in a lot of tests, and it doesn't yellow, and it's super strong. But I also use UV glue sometimes when everything has its limitations. So if I find a limitation with Hextall, I'll use UV glue sometimes. I found a brand that works great, never yellows, and is super strong. And you can kind of clean it and contour it into the glass enough so that it all blends in to look as one.
Great. And how does the molten glass connect to the foam?
Good question. So it's melted together. So they're both in the mold at the same time. Uh, so I'll have a layer of the solid glass or a billet or cullet that's and it's it's also introduced at the same time, and sometimes at other times than the glass that has the foaming agent in it. So they're both in there at the same time, and sometimes I'll introduce the glass with the foaming agent in it later, after the other, and kind of pour it in after the solid glass is melted. And then I'll fire it again for hours or whatever time was necessary for them to all melt together. So there's different ways of doing it depending on the piece that I'm doing, but they're both melted together in the kiln at the mold at the same time.
Right, which kind of leads to the next question. Someone says, since you're teaching vesicular glass, I thought I'd ask what creates the bubbles. Is it glass powder and baking soda, salt? But sounds like a foaming agent, you said.
Yeah, I'll go over that very specifically, but there is a foaming agent. It's a powder that I do introduce at a very specific ratio to the glass.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I think I've heard baking soda comes up a lot. I've used it before, and it can work. Yes, but it's not. It doesn't work as well as, and it has different effects. I'm not gonna say as well. It has different effects as is what I've been doing recently, which I'll go over in the class.
All right. And someone also asking about the cast work, noticing that your pieces have very few bubbles. Um, did you learn that from a class? And if so, which instructor, or did you come to that over time?
I'd say it depends on how you start. If you want less bubbles, start with glass that has less bubbles in it, like billets, like big chunks or blocks of glass. If you want minimal bubbles, because it already doesn't have bubbles in it, so you can kind of versus using cullet or frit. If you use frit, the space in between each tiny piece of glass is going to be a bubble. So that means you have to have a longer hold time at casting temperature to get all those bubbles out of there. So you can cast clear glass that has bubbles, that starts with bubbles in it, but you have to hold it at that temperature for a very long time in order for all those bubbles to float to the top and pop. So,
And a couple artists wanting to know what the brand of UV glue is that does not yellow. I knew that would be a popular question.
oh, okay. Let me grab it. It's right here.
All right.
Happy to share it.
Great to have in studio access for real time information.
Yeah. I just got it in today. A new bottle. It's a CRL. So I use it's CRL company UV adhesive, and I'd go with the medium viscosity.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And
Yes,
I assume your contact information is on your website if people would like to reach you.
it is. It's on the
Okay.
website and Instagram. Visit my Instagram. Is very active. Most of everything that I do, I share and communicate on Instagram. And my website's great for as a portfolio too, and to find locations to collect work where you can find it and different shows if I'm doing shows or events.
Okay, wonderful. And again, Jeremy is represented by Habitat Gallery, our sponsor of today's program. Thank you so much. This was incredibly interesting. You've been very generous with your time and information. I'm going to go ahead and stop the
Oh, thank
recording,
you.
and then if people would like to unmute themselves, they can also talk to Jeremy directly and ask any more questions that they have.
Great. Thank you so much. This is fun.